It's a fact that our childhood traumas influence our adult relationships. That is, until we heal certain traumas that are actually creating these relationship patterns. There is this famous quote that says, if you don't address your childhood problems, your relationships certainly will. And I completely agree with that. Our adult relationships can be a perfect mirror that will show us what else needs to be healed in our personal space in order to have healthier relationships. In this video, I will share 5 common adult relationship patterns that are influenced by unresolved childhood trauma. From my work with clients, it is crystal clear that we subconsciously are attracted to certain partners, that it is, again, a subconscious manifestation of a familiar relationship that we had with one of our parents, and that seeking a relationship now with a partner that somehow subconsciously are familiar to one of our parents is actually a goal to repair that unfulfilled relationship from way in the past. So in other words, we are reacting, okay? So repetition of the act. We are reacting the same kind of scenario, well, with differences, of course, but this is, again, a subconscious process. So we are reacting the same scenario that we are trying to fix, and in other words, put a different ending on it, okay? So it starts as a familiar dynamic, but then the goal is to change that dynamic, because we know from the very early days that that dynamic between one of ourselves and one of our parents wasn't fulfilling. So now what we are trying to do in our adult relationship is still be drawn by the same dynamic, but the idea is to fix it, to put a different ending to it, and somehow get those needs met. So as I go through the list, pay attention and recognize, is any of these patterns actually repeating in your relationships? And if it does, that's a brilliant indication that you can fix it within yourself first, and then, of course, the manifestation of a healthier relationship is possible because you're no longer repeating the same pattern. You were able to either break the pattern or interrupt the pattern or completely change the whole thing. So number 1 relationship pattern is seeking partners that are controlling, seeking partners that are dominant. Let me ask you this question. If you are experiencing this pattern, where one or both of your parents or caregivers really controlling, was any of them really authoritarian and dominant? Also, did you experience in your childhood a lot of harsh disciplining or punishment, and that feeling that you had zero control over yourself because things were always decided for you and you didn't have any say in anything? So if you have experienced certain things in your childhood, you may be looking now for these dominant and controlling partners because it is familiar to you not to be able to make decisions for yourself. So subconsciously, you're looking for a partner that will continue making all the decisions for you, just like your parents did. So the second common relationship pattern that I come across a lot in my practice is seeking emotionally unavailable partners. When we dig deeper to understand why this might be a case, we often find that this is to do with childhood where you didn't experience a parent or caregiver who was genuinely interested in you. So generally, these are the clients that felt lonely when they were children because their parents were dismissive or just completely unconcerned about their children. And now, in your adult relationships, you are the most comfortable. Again, subconscious process. You are the most comfortable with partners that give you breadcrumbs of attention. So because you got used to not being seen or considered or heard in your childhood, now you also are attracted to these partners who are generally not really concerned about your emotional needs or any kind of needs, really. They are more self-absorbed and you are kind of on the side. So third relationship pattern is seeking critical partners. If you are someone who always ends up with critical partners, ask yourself, did you really feel accepted by your parents? Or your parents were also very critical and you never ever felt good enough. Whatever you did was not good enough. Because so many of us have experienced this harsh criticism from our parents, subconsciously we have normalized it because we always had to work for that love and approval. Now we are attracted to partners that are critical, that are trying to change us, to fix us. And there is that familiar feeling, that familiar strive to work for love, to work for the approval. But again, it never seems to be enough. The other part of that is actually seeking partners who we think we can fix. The other relationship pattern is actually seeking partners who are a project, who we can fix. So we tend to, criticize them or somehow try to fix them or try to make them better in one way or another, and we take responsibility for it. If this is your pattern, have a look at were your parents reliable or whether they were irresponsible, there was always trouble with money, whether there were problems with, alcohol and other substances and that kind of unreliable emotional turmoil. So have a look at that because this will tell you why you are now subconsciously trying to fix that situation in your partnership. Because when you are in that fixing mode, it gives you sense of control. It gives you sense of empowerment. Because subconsciously, like I said before, you are trying to put a different ending on the situation that you lived through. And if you are running this pattern, you will be attracted to people that need your help, to people that need your parenting, really, and people who need to be fixed and somehow changed. And you will feel good in these relationships because that empowerment and sense of control is there. But at the same time, it's a lot of disappointment because you can't fix anyone. They need to be intentional in their own growth. And the last common relationship pattern is seeking partners that betray us. So once again, I ask you to look back and see if there is any evidence in your childhood, when you think about it, where you experienced or you've witnessed that betrayal, whether these are two parents that were sort of betraying each other in their marriage or in general, not necessarily being unfaithful, but not having each other's back, let's say. So this kind of model of betrayal was presented to you and subconsciously was normalized in your little mind. Also, think back and see how much transparency was available, how much honesty was available in the relationships that you witnessed when you were little, and were people taking accountability for their actions, or were they not? So this will give you indications why you may be replaying that pattern of betrayal. So if any of these patterns are currently expressing themselves in your adult relationships, I hope I helped you to see the connection to your childhood trauma, let's say, or childhood neglect that you experienced. But that's not the end of it. The point is that none of these patterns are written in stone. And if you have experienced certain things back in your childhood, and even if you have created this pattern that is playing out right now in your relationships, that doesn't mean that all of this cannot be changed. And that doesn't mean that you cannot heal and start co-creating healthier relationships that don't play out these weird patterns. So if you found this information useful and helpful, you know what to do. And if you have any questions, please leave them below. I'll be happy to answer them. And if you are finally ready to tackle these subconscious patterns and just don't know how and where to begin and what to do about them, but you just know that you're finally ready to get rid of them, I'll leave a link below where you can book your free consultation. And let's talk. In the meantime, all the best and see you soon.